I never wanted to be a cop. I just happened to become one as a result of a crime that happened to me. Didn't think I was capable, had to prove to myself that I was capable, went and joined the Marine Corps to prove that I was capable. And I still struggle with, am I capable? I mean, I sit at the top of the food chain, for the state police, but I still question every day, am I capable?
Good morning, everyone. I want to thank everybody for being here today. I'm Jason Lawrence, the Deputy Director of Training for the Division of Law Enforcement Standards and Training. We want to welcome everyone here today, and more importantly, our up to 18 now listeners to the 10-8 podcast. As we begin, most important thing, like and subscribe. Hit that notification bell to make sure you understand that we have a new episode dropping today. I'm joined by my favorite co-host in the world, Dr. Chris Clem. Wave to the crowd, please. Thank you. And the one and only Kelvin Sargent.
Good morning.
We are joined today by three amazing females in law enforcement. I'd like to take a moment and let y'all introduce yourselves to our guest today, starting with you, Major.
I'm Stacie Rhoads. I'm a major with the Criminal Investigation Division of the Arkansas State Police.
Thank you, ma'am.
Corporal Christiana McKibbon. I am a corporal with the Office of Professional Standards.
And my name is Lynn Waterworth. I am the Assistant Chief at the Jonesboro Police Department.
Thank y'all so much for being here. Extremely excited. A couple of months ago, we did an episode for the 10-8 podcast of women in law enforcement, our leaders in law enforcement, and great input from that. And it's kind of brought up something that we're going to be working on and talking about today, an upcoming Women of Valor Conference. So if I get y'all to maybe talk about what kind of drive, what made you want to go down this road?
So for me personally, I've been in law enforcement for 27 years. And, there were at points in my career where it would have been nice, because in most agencies there's just a limited number of females. Mm-hmm. And it would have been nice to be able to reach out and have someone maybe mentor or just have somebody go, hey, I'm experiencing this. Is this all in my head? Is there something, and just kind of really get some guidance. And so I think, we always say, I want to be the woman that I needed when I was younger. And I don't want these younger officers to not have that. And so when we talked about this, one of the things that for me personally was when we meet and then when we leave, I want everybody to have somebody they can call. As they, some of them are starting on their careers, some are, several years in, some of us are at the end of our careers, but that doesn't mean that we still can't help learn and energize the next generation.
That's awesome.
Ladies, what about y'all? What's your passion and drive behind wanting to do this type of conference? Chief?
Kind of the same thing. For me, I never envisioned myself as a law enforcement officer starting out. Mm-hmm. I tell everybody jokingly, I was a health services administration major.
What is that?
That's like a business administration major with an emphasis in health services.
Okay.
So, and somebody came along at my part-time job while I was going to college and said, I got a job I want you to come apply for. And I was like, doing what? And fast forward several years, and I took that person's place.
Wow.
That particular client of ours at the pharmacy was the assistant chief of the police department at the time, and I took his place all these years later. So I never really envisioned myself here, and when I started out, I was it. Like,
wow.
There was one other female officer that was there when I first started, and she quickly left and went to state police for some reason. They seemed to think that was that was the place to be.
We have cooler hats.
There you go. Much cooler hats. And then when she left, I was it. And so what you're talking about, where there weren't any other females, and it's just different for women. We have a different experience, and as much as we want to say, hey, we want to be separate but equal kind of thing, it's just different for women. And so there are some shared experiences that you can talk about other females with. It's not the same for the guys.
Sure. And
so it's a big deal to have this opportunity coming up.
Well, Corporal, I know you were somewhat drug into this whole thing, the podcast today, and being involved in the first place. I had visited with you on several occasions about this, and you kind of mentioned the struggle and they've already mentioned it. How many total years do you have now in law enforcement?
9.
9 years. And I would assume there's differences in a male-dominated society being that minority immigrant group. So what is your hope about these women that attend? What do you want them to get out of this?
I mean, basically, kind of what Major said. I want them to know that they're not alone. That even if they're with a different department, that we're, it's just like anything else. We're all brothers and sisters in blue,
Sure.
right? But even being in a different department, we're still all sisters in blue. So whether you're with Jonesboro or Conway or Little Rock or wherever, even us here at the State Police, we've got your back. We're here for you. And one thing that's really stood out for me is I try to be really involved with like troop school and teaching classes and things like that. And I've noticed that at the end of troop school, and I kind of took this from Major a little bit, but I have to have conversations with our female recruits that are fixing to graduate that I don't have to have with the guys. And that kind of piggybacks off the fact that because we are different than the guys.
Well, and I think that's something that you ladies bring: strong, powerful, good cops. But you bring a female perspective that honestly none of us can even we can talk about it, but it doesn't mean the same. And that's where this excitement for me has grown. When we got done with the podcast, and Chief, I'm going to pick on you for a minute. I can't tell you how many times as we would visit the academies, because we challenged them, go watch it. Those ladies would come up and go, you need more of that. We need somebody. And that's where I think you ladies can bring something in to that, of how we are able to open up the doors to have tough conversations, which all are willing to have, about the struggles. 20 plus years, how many total?
Way too many.
Yes, ma'am, way too many. Okay, noted.
June 27th, 1988 was when I walked in the door. So I'm coming up on my 37th anniversary.
Wow.
Next couple of weeks. Yes.
Wow.
And again, I never planned this. This is not where I thought I would be or that I would stay this long, for crying out loud. But, you have to look at it from a leadership perspective anyway. When you are Christiana and you are in the meat and potatoes of, man, you can kick butt and take names and do the hard things and stuff like that, that's the fun part. But you have to kind of learn to adjust as you move forward, as I'm sure the Major has learned, to do more of okay, now what can I do to help this generation keep kicking butt and taking names? And then you have to yourself kind of cycle into that, okay, I can't really play ball as well as I could once before, as much as I hate to admit that.
Yes, ma'am.
And you have to become that coach. And so
I love that.
Now's when we're in that coaching thing, and I so look forward to coaching the next generation.
Well, if you don't mind me asking, how many females does Jonesboro have right now?
You would make me do that.
Ballpark.
We're ballpark at about 18.
18?
And 17 maybe.
How many
Okay.
total officers?
Total officers, well, authorized 175. You know how that goes. You can't keep but about 160 of those holes filled at a time. So out of about 160, we're running national average, which is about 12%.
Okay.
And I was looking again today, I think 2023, it was saying around 14%. So 12 to 14% seems to be the number. So you're kind of falling right in that.
Right.
But I know the goal is to get more women officers in.
Absolutely. I'd love to see us have more. Women, we are our own worst enemies because I don't know how to explain this, and I don't mean this derogatory toward the men in the room, but
ma'am.
men tend to think, what kind of job is that? Pff, I can do that. Heck yeah. Yeah. And you don't have any of the qualifications listed on your resume, but you'll just wave right off and do it anyway. And women won't. We won't do that for whatever reason. And so there needs to be kind of that coach, that mentor person that comes back and says, you can do this. You bring things to the table that the guys never thought about.
I love the fact that you guys are talking about the peer aspect, because we talk about the importance of peer just in law enforcement in general, that we need people that mentor other people. That's absolutely critical. And I can see how much more critical it is to have females doing the exact same thing, where you've got somebody you can look at, emulate, that's available to you. That's awesome. I love that idea.
State Police, how many females?
So-
Y'all are staffed for now 10,000, is that correct?
Pretty close.
Okay, yes, got it.
Pretty close. So right now we're right at 585, somewhere around in
Yes,
there.
ma'am.
We have 23. 23
Across the
females
state of Arkansas.
across the state of Arkansas.
Wow.
Yeah. not everybody wants to wear the hat.
No, and I think that is something that, you know, I believe we are our best recruiters. Law enforcement is the best recruiters for other law enforcement officers. And for you ladies, I mean, strong, powerful, smart, articulate, great cops. How do we reach out to that young lady who's 15, 16 years old who looks up and goes, I want to do that? And I think that's where we've got to start looking at now. Currently, what do we have? How do we magnify that? How do we increase the size of it? So, you know, we got the conference coming up on July 23rd from 8 to 4 at Central Academy. And I know I've been involved in some of your meetings, if y'all putting the plan together, kind of the agenda. And so if y'all don't mind, I'd like for y'all to talk about it a little bit. You're going to have to let me put my glasses on. Excuse me, sir.
It's okay. You're doing great.
Yes.
You need me to read
Keep
it
the
for
glare
you?
down.
Oh, yeah.
Keep that glare down.
Absolutely.
Just give up and wear them all the time.
Yes, ma'am. Noted. I only have one eye, so it's all right. So, for example, we got our keynote speaker. So we have the SA, our special agent in charge for the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and she's coming in. What do you hope that she will be able to bring at that point?
So, and they can certainly weigh in. You know, Alicia is, you know, with the FBI,
Yes, ma'am.
and you know, just because they're the FBI doesn't mean that they don't face the same challenges that we do. I think that she is going to, I think, really energize and give us another perspective from the federal aspect of you know what they deal with at that federal level.
Okay. So, and as we go through, and it's absolutely jam-packed. We've got a personality assessment coming in next. Why do we need to take a personality test?
I think it. Oh, sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, so one of the first things I think that we all get wrong is we don't know. You know, we don't have that self-assessment. Like,
Right.
What do I get right? What do I get wrong? It's easy to go out here and say, hey, these are my strengths. But not everybody really faces their blind spots.
Right.
Ooh,
And
I
so
like that.
to know yourself, especially because like the whole goal of this is to push to push women into leadership.
Right.
And, you know, you can't lead yourself if you don't know what you're capable of. And so that's what I hope that they get out. It's like, know what you're capable of.
I 100% agree with you.
Piggybacks off of what I said. We are our own worst enemies. We will second guess ourselves and feel like, you know, golly, if I'd done this or if I'd done that, maybe it would have had a better outcome or something like that. And so to better understand, you know, one thing that helped me personally is somebody challenged me at a women's conference some years back. It was and I say conference, it was like a 2 or 3 day thing. It was geared toward females in law enforcement. And they said, get a book. Not that I expect you to journal every day, but get a book and write down things that you want to tell yourself a few years from now.
Wow.
Write down things that you think are good tips. But also, you know, as you come to the realization of this is one of my strengths, which is exactly what you're talking about, write it down. This is one of my successes. Write it down. And then one of these days when you're having a real crappy day, you go back and you look over that list of successes and you'll feel like that day's not so crappy anymore.
That is amazing. You know, we're very blessed and fortunate we get to teach leadership across the state of Arkansas in our basic academies as well. And a student, and I believe it was A class down in Camden, a young man from Jefferson County asked us, you know, if you go back in time and sit in these seats, what would you tell yourselves? And I believe it was Mr. Sargent says, we're doing it right now. And I think that's what makes me excited about for you ladies, 9 years, 20 plus years. Nobody's mentioned the number of years, Chief. But the ability to go back and say, I wish somebody would have sat down with me at a very young age. You know, Doc, you've looked at personality assessments before and the importance. Why do you think it's important that they understand it as a student sitting in this class?
Well, Major Rhoads said it so eloquently. I mean, you can't lead well unless you know yourself well. You know your strengths and your weaknesses, identify your blind spots, but it also helps you identify those things in other people. And leadership's about influence. And so being able to apply those principles, it's a superpower. And yeah, so the more you...
Like Wonder Woman.
Yes. There you go.
Sure, lasso. Happens to be in the room with us.
That's right. But it is true that if you know your personality, you can identify those traits in other people. It helps you to lead them more effectively. And so it's an emotional intelligence thing. And so it's critical.
Man, that's great. So as we rock on that day, effective leadership communication, you know, why do you think communication is key?
I I mean, I just had an interview recently where I talked about how important communication is. It's probably one of the most important traits or skills
Sure.
that we can have, whether you're man or woman, but specifically for us females in law enforcement, especially if you want to move up into leadership, because the way that we communicate, I feel like, is, number one, it's judged a little more harshly anyways. So it's the most important skill.
Why do you think it's judged differently for a female compared to a male?
Well, are we being emotional? Are we,
Okay,
you know what I
right.
mean?
Yes, ma'am.
Are we speaking out of emotion, or are we just speaking out of truth and fact based? How often do men get told they're just being emotional?
Wow.
And it could be, and it's funny that you mentioned this, because the first thing when you said that, I thought of an example of somebody that I know that is a top-notch leader, but when they are passionate, when they feel very strongly about something, that voice, and this is just, it's a female thing, that voice kind of goes up a little bit, goes up an octave. And so then, like, if you're in the next room, sometimes you can't decide if that person is really passionate, or are they mad, or are they whatever, and your words are exactly how it comes out. Like, if it were a guy, it would probably be like, "Ooh, he's hot," or something like that. But with her, it's, "Oh, she's emotional."
That
Wow.
was put in one of my evals one time, that I was emotional. Yeah.
Seriously. Well, and I think that is something that I make sure everybody listening today, whether they're the female officer or a male law enforcement officer, understand the importance of making sure that the communication is key. I don't doubt anyone sitting right here at this point that you're qualified to do the job and you are passionate about the topic of law enforcement. If you weren't, honestly, there's a million other things you could have done today. So I think it's important we understand ourselves and open up those doors so ladies who attend can look at it and say they understand my struggle in regards to it.
That's good.
Yep.
So of course it was. Another one, navigating law enforcement culture.
Wow.
My goodness.
Oh,
The
yeah.
culture, the
And
dreaded
the
C
big one.
word.
They were scraping the man. They're like, "Who can we get to? Oh yeah, we'll get you to do that."
I don't think
So,
you were there that
you know-
day and you were voluntold to do it.
Well, actually, no, I did volunteer for that. But, it is a big deal. And I think you talked about that when we first started out. It's, for all intents and purposes, a male-dominated thing. And so much about law enforcement, to me, I think I remember saying early on in my career that I started, guys, just before the state police backed off of their height and weight requirements.
Really?
Yes. So, like, I can remember those first troopers that came in that were less than 6 feet tall and things like that. And so it's within my career that some of these things have started to change. And if you look at it like law enforcement, we're here to arrest bad guys and do this and do this, hey, in a perfect world, every law enforcement officer would be over 6 feet tall and two and a buck or so and be able to wrestle all the bad guys to the ground. But that's not the way this works. And we, as law enforcement, need team members of every description. This is one of my favorite things to tell people at work. I'm putting together a team, and I don't need all pitchers. I don't need all catchers. We need people that are able to do all the jobs. And women are uniquely qualified to do so much of this job that is unbelievable. And it's a detriment overall that we don't have more females.
I agree.
That is amazing.
I love the idea of going back to knowing ourselves, the strengths and the weaknesses. Absolutely, females bring skill sets that males just don't have or have to develop. So why can't we leverage those? And instead of trying to put everybody round peg, round hole, why don't we just look at who they are and then fit them on the team in the right spot? And I think that's a great analogy, Chief. Thank you for that.
Do you think maybe it's because there are some people out there, not naming any names, but don't want to take the time to look to make sure you have a team in those aspects to go, they're very qualified at this. Let's plug them in here at that point. Do you think that's a failure across?
I wouldn't call it a failure. I think we do what's easy.
Ooh.
And we tend to, it's like difficult conversations are the barrier to progress. Don't know where
That's a
one of
t-shirt.
those. That's one of those things I saw one time that I wrote in my book, right?
Wow.
And that is, true time and time again. Whether you are a supervisor dealing with a subordinate, whether you're a parent dealing with a child, or just a friend dealing with another friend, sometimes those difficult conversations need to take place. But some of this goes back to something that the director and I have had a conversation about several times. We need more leadership training for law enforcement.
Yes, ma'am.
We should do something about
We
that.
should.
Yes, yes. And part of that is because we need to learn how to be better leaders.
Right.
That is great. And I know, Kelvin, your time at the Pine Bluff Police Department, you saw an increase in the females that were hired during that time as well. And was that a push for you? Was that an attention for you? Where did you see it as you knew you needed to hire some more?
Well, in Pine Bluff, we saw the big deal was the females that we had on staff. They did a good job going out doing recruiting, seeing other females, meeting them, introducing them to the job, encouraging them that they could do the job. And so when I started getting more applicants coming in, if they met the criteria for the job, we hired them. And so I seen a big influx during a few years before I became the chief there, on to after I retired, that Pine Bluff did a pretty good job of.
Did you see your female officers as almost a force multiplier?
Yes, I had a former chief that told me that he felt that women could do the job better than men could. Mm-hmm. And so as we were talking, the thing that he pointed out to me, a woman is going to slow down, she's going to be analytical and how to approach certain things, whereas a man, more times than not, would just run into it without thinking and analyzing. And so, so he pointed that out to me. And so that's one thing you begin to see when you had critical situations. A lot of times females will slow down, analyze, evaluate the best way to handle something, and could end up handling a situation without having to use force and things of that nature. So that's one thing he pointed out to me at that time, and I saw that throughout my career as well.
Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of studies that are out now that say just exactly that. They've kind of looked at that female officers are less likely to be involved in a use of force or response to resistance. They're less likely to be complained on. Even as far back as when I was in the academy, I remember my roommate, who was a park ranger. This is when they first had the park rangers that were actually gun-toting law enforcement type park rangers. She was one of those first ones. She said, the big difference is we know how to use this, and pointed at her mouth, and said, we know how to use this better than the men.
I was actually told at one point that I was too timid because of the way that I spoke to people.
I find that shocking, ma'am.
Exactly.
Just saying. Just saying.
I mean, this is me we're
yes,
talking
ma'am.
about.
Yes, ma'am.
But it really was like I could. This is not a lie. 9 times out of 10, I could write somebody a ticket, and they told me thank you as I was handing it to them.
Okay.
And it was just because I treated people with respect and the way that I spoke to them. All my time on the highway, I ever went hands-on with somebody one time, and it was just simply because she didn't want to be handcuffed, and it all I had to do was pull my taser out, and she definitely didn't want that. So she took the handcuff option over that. But it's how I speak to people that keep me, because I know as a female the chances of me going hands-on with a 6 foot, 200-pound man and making it back to my family and to my shift is much smaller than my male counterparts. So I know what I would have to do in that situation, and I would just rather be able to talk to people in a way that they don't want to fight me.
Sure.
Which it's a respect thing. And an example as to what she's saying is I'll never forget a traffic stop I made. I wasn't even working the highway, but I was a drill instructor that week, and it was at the end of my week. I was exhausted. Believe it or not, being a drill instructor, the recruits think they got it bad. Being a drill instructor is a lot of work. But I was very tired. It was late at night. I was headed home, and I hadn't talked to my mom all week. And I talked to my mom most days of the week. And so I hadn't talked to her, and I was on the phone with her on my way home, and I got to notice in this car was trying to race me. They didn't realize I was, a law enforcement officer going down the interstate. And I'm like, Mom, I got to pull this car over. So I walk up there, and it's like attitude. I mean, I'm just being talked to poorly, and I'm mad now, you know, and I'm like, I get to notice that I'm knife handing like a DI, like I'm DI knife handing her,
Yes,
you know,
ma'am.
coming in through the window, and this situation is escalating. And so I go back to my car and I breathe for a second, and I'm like, there's something else going on here. So I walk back up there and I'm like, what's going on? And she just breaks down and she starts crying. And she's like, you just don't understand how hard life is right now. And like starts telling me her life story. And she's a great kid. I mean, from what she's telling me, got her head on her shoulders. She's just really in a tough spot in life. And I had that opportunity to make a difference in her life. Like that situation could have gone in one or two ways. And I was able to make a difference in her life right then and there, instead of it escalating to the point that she was going to go to jail that night because I didn't have empathy for her.
Wow. And I think that speaks to the true epitome of, as you pointed out, Chief, using this sometimes, not having emotion. And of course, it's comical being accused of being too emotional, but you were so in check with your own emotions, you realized there was something coming. And I think that's the great thing about bringing ladies into law enforcement, putting them in a position that they can lead and be in those positions. So one of my favorite things, we kind of go into this, and we're going to provide lunch that day, and then we have a panel discussion. I'm extremely excited. We have brought in the key moderator across the state of Arkansas to address this. So moderator, could you talk about a little which kind of your ideas?
Lots of F-bombs, probably, if my reputation holds true.
No, ma'am. Nothing but professionalism out of you, ma'am.
So, you know, and we'll start it, but a lot of times we don't know what they're facing out there. So we're hoping to engage the audience, for them to bring questions to us. We're gonna, the panel's gonna be there to kind of bring their own perspectives. You know, we don't all view the world the same way, so we're not all gonna have the same answers. But hopefully, you know, that there's that girl out there who's facing something, and you know, hopefully we can provide her answers so she can go back there. And you know, they may not come this time to this particular course, but we're looking to do them in the future, and hopefully they'll go back, spread the word. Then we'll have, we just want this to grow. We want this to grow and be something that benefits everyone. And so, yeah, so bring your questions, whatever you have, whether it's, you know, I know getting the gun belt off at the convenience store and not getting my stuff down, and those are questions that girls want to know.
They do.
That our male counterpoints don't do.
That's a whole different thing. I didn't even think about that. But it's a whole different, like, when you got to go, you're like making a plan, because it's not the same thing. It's not the same thing that it is for the guys. Yes.
Okay, noted.
Wow.
I learned something today.
So.
Yes, and so that'll be the number one topic. Yes, ma'am.
I'm sure it will be brought up.
Awesome. I love it. And maybe there's new techniques in regards to it. That's the importance of coming to this class in July, folks.
Well, I have here's what I'm hearing.
So what we've learned is
Yes, ma'am.
I will not elevate.
That's exactly how I'm going.
No.
It's not going to be elevated.
No,
with
that's
me in
why
charge.
you're the moderator, ma'am.
But
Real world,
but
just
on a
different
serious note, that is a real thing. So we are talking about the idea. What I heard you guys saying was we're going to provide some good training. We're also going to provide relationships, some support. So the hope is that when folks leave, they're trained up a little bit, but more importantly, they're developing some relationships that are going to benefit them throughout their career. People, mentors, coaches, resources, wellness friends, whatever.
And there's some things like, and this is going to, I think, hold true for anybody, whether you're male or female. But I think back to the female perspective of things, like there's some things that might go on at your agency that you really want to talk to somebody about that. Mm-hmm. And you don't always want to talk to somebody with your agency,
Sure.
Because there's a certain amount of, I don't want to be judged because, I thought this way or that way. But then also just to, like you said, to have that female perspective on it, like, it's going to make a lot of difference for people, I think.
That's awesome.
So our last block, and I'm excited about this block for everybody, but we're going to talk about mental, physical health, wellness, resiliency, and we're bringing in a true superstar. So Heidi Ramsey, I knew her as Marshall back in the day, currently with the FBI National Academy, is coming in. Thanks to the major for getting her in. What do you think she wants to bring across to the ladies in Arkansas?
So Heidi's a firecracker.
Yeah, she is.
And Heidi is just like us. She's a female, and she faced a lot of the same issues that we do. Overcame a lot of things that you and I just can't even imagine with her job. She's former Ohio Highway Patrol.
Yes, ma'am.
She left them, retired. I went to the National Academy. She and I were classmates. She retired, then she went on to the National Academy, and her story is amazing. When you hear what she has overcome and the things that she has done, and she believes in other women. Probably both of y'all can attest to this. I see our male counterparts. They have a friendly competition. Like even at my gym, I see guys, we bench press, they're all bench pressing, and they're
Sure.
encouraging others. A lot of times I see the women in our profession, we tend to get, we compare ourselves a little bit more and a little more judgmental instead of encouraging them to be better. Sometimes we judge and not that we knock them down, but we want to be the queen of the castle. And so I don't see a whole level of encouragement like I do with our male counterparts. Heidi brings that perspective of it's okay to fix her crown without the world knowing it's crooked. Ooh. And I absolutely love that about her. And I think that when, I'm telling you, you've met her, she's so energetic and so energizing, and you walk away feeling so much better about the things that you've struggled through and knowing it's not going to hold you down. That's her whole message. There were so many times in her career that she could have been bogged down by being a female. She was the colonel's daughter. She had all of these things that she was being judged by that really could have derailed her career. But, she found strength. She picked herself up. Wow. And it's beautiful.
It's going to be an amazing event.
It really is.
It truly is.
Really awesome.
Once again, July 23rd, go to the CLES portal right now. You can register. It's up. Please, I don't care if we have, my goal is 400. I kind of want that to go. Kentucky did 400. We can do 401. We can beat Kentucky all day long. But ladies, before we sign off, I want to take a brief moment and let y'all have some closing comments, kind of your general thoughts in regards to the conference. Anything you would like to say, Chief? I'm going to start with you.
Sign up, show up, be there, be present. Just being present and getting to meet other female officers and stuff, you'll get something from it, period.
Good.
End of story.
Wonderful. Corporal?
Oh, well, you actually started this off, and I don't remember your exact words now, but you said something along the lines of, we can sit here and talk about it all day long. Well, that's just it. We don't.
Yes, ma'am.
We don't talk about it. So come talk about it. Let's talk about it.
I'm excited. Major?
So I'm giving everybody homework.
Yes, ma'am.
That not y'all, but
okay.
for the females that I hope. And so, I was a lot like Lynn. I never wanted to be a cop. I just happened to become one as a result of a crime that happened to me. Didn't think I was capable, had to prove to myself that I was capable, went and joined the Marine Corps to prove that I was capable. And I still struggle with, am I capable? I mean, I sit at the top of the food chain, for the state police, but I still question every day, am I capable? Imposter syndrome is a real thing. And so I really study at how do I get better at who I am. And one of the things that I found, and this is for all, and even, a lot of our male counterparts would benefit from this, but Likeable Badass is a book that I have found that it talks about women in male-dominated fields, about how we get judged, how we can, because we're the emotional people, we're the ones that we want to de-escalate, and this book right here teaches you how to be competent but be likable, because one of the things that I see a lot of women do is they make that mistake. They want to be aggressive because they want to be like that male. They don't want to be called timid. They don't want to be all of these things, so they take on this persona that's not really them. They want to be gruff and I've got to be stern and all this kind of stuff. But it's okay to be likable. You can still be a badass and be likable. So this is a book that I recommend, Likeable Badass by Allison Fergale. It's fantastic. You don't have to read it. You can listen to it too. But it's, so for y'all that are coming, you're probably going to be asked some questions about this, so don't let me down.
So I want to pull that up again. The very bottom part, how women get the success they deserve. And I think that is what our goal is through all this, and through your leadership through all this, is helping those young ladies get the success that they deserve in this profession.
Yeah.
So thank y'all for being here. Mr. Sergeant, any closing comments, anything you'd like to say?
I'm just one thing I was thinking about as I was listening to you all talk. Do you all think sometime in the future it would be advantageous to have a follow-up class where men attend some type of training like this with the women to get an understanding of what women face? A lot of times, I don't know if all men are aware of the challenges that you all face as female officers. And so if you're in a forum together where you can bring those to the table, maybe you can also bridge the gap of understanding between men and women as well.
You know, I went to, I don't know if it's the Women in Law Enforcement Conference. You ever been to that? It's like a week long, and I went, gosh, it's been years ago, probably 10 years ago. It was in Arizona, and there was a man, there was a captain from, I want to say Colorado, that he came because he wanted to learn how to lead women better.
Right.
And that was fantastic. I mean, it was absolutely.
There was a small conference here in the state, smaller than the one you're talking about, that was 3 days long. Little Rock PD hosted a couple of different times. And there were just a handful, but the same thing, there were just a handful of guys who said, I feel like if I listen to what's going on, that will make me better as far as recruiting for my agency.
Right. Okay, that's awesome.
Doctor.
Love what Christiana said. We're talking about it, and I think that's where this starts. Mm-hmm. And we have great support at all leadership levels for making this happen, and I think the time is now to have these conversations. So I'm excited to see this progress.
Well, ladies, I will tell you, you inspire us every single day. As a father of 2 daughters, I hope they grow up to be just like y'all. And I mean that. And that is a compliment. And I want you to understand that, because I see you as great human beings, great cops, strong leaders in your community. So thank you for what you do. I want you to know that. So before we sign off, of course, we want to thank the governor and the secretary and the chief of staff for allowing us to serve in these positions, the attorney general for giving us the funds, of course, to have this studio. So as we sign off, and we are no longer 10-8, hit that like and subscribe. But more importantly, realize we're always in service. Thank y'all for being here. Oh,
Don't forget leg day.
yes, don't forget leg day.